If you could introduce yourself, tell us who you're with and some titles that you've worked on.
I'm Tyson Steele. I am a technical artist for Toy Studio, and I'm also currently working as a contract for Robomoto. Some of the titles I've worked on and that are coming out soon is a Facebook game called Candy Dream, another HTML5 mobile cross-platform game called Word Off, and coming soon is Tony Hawk's Pro Skater HD for, I believe, Xbox Live and the PSX network.
Can you tell us a little bit about your educational background and how you became a tech artist from that?
Sure. I started on undergrad. I intended to be a video game something and had no idea what that was. So they advised me to move into maybe more of this kind of half technical, half artwork kind of thing. I said, no, I'll do computer science. So I started in theoretical computer science, heavy math. That wasn't a problem, but it was dry. It was databases. It was traditional kind of thing. So I switched and I went to a major that was a bit of a hybrid, and it was kind of a misfit. It's some animation, some programming, and kind of by fortune and luck ran into a company that was hiring as a small startup.
Can you give an example of how you used tech art skills to improve the production process on one of the titles?
Sure. Actually, back when we were using Flash for a Facebook game, it's not something you traditionally think of as like a major tech art role because there's not a lot of bridge there. However, we had a spec that had a massive amount of assets, and many of them needed to be animated and moving and lively. So we ran into an issue where it was just a raw amount of work that could not be done. Traditional Flash animation, especially for these articulated characters, meant that if we wanted the character to have unique facial attributes, the way the artist initially wanted to do it was just make these, every single one, and the permutations, it either limited how customized the character could be and the player's options, or it basically was an impossible workload. And so I basically just investigated and looked into, at the time it was an armature-based kind of a rigging system very early on, and basically putting that type of, thinking about rigging and more traditional for 3D type aspects and trying to bring it into Flash allowed us to create sort of a more generalized rig that could have assets popped in and out through basic, very basic scripting, and then the artists were able to focus on making, dozens of hats and faces and that kind of thing.
Well, that's really neat, because that's a place you don't usually think about tech art necessarily having a home.
Yeah, Flash, it's a misfit.
What elements from computer science, mathematics, psychology, traditional arts do you find yourself reaching back for?
I find that, especially at a smaller studio, you are going to take on a lot more design. That's kind of something that's been a topic here at GDC lately. You will have a lot more autonomy, but it also means that you need to come back to some of that core, things like color theory and design and composition and user interface and usability especially. Well, usability I guess that's not unusual. Whether you're making a tool as a tech artist or if you are, taking over some sort of UI implementation, making sure that the end user, whether it's the player or one of your coworkers, is able to use this thing and understand it and kind of tap into, their flow, their creative process is crucial, I think.
What's the most important thing that educators need to know about the role of a technical artist or the training of a technical artist?
I think if you are going to attempt to create a technical art curriculum, you have to identify these students, because it's a very different path from students who end up being one of the more strict disciplines. A person who wants to become a 3D modeler or texture artist or somewhere in the art field, they're going to want to hard drill that for as long as they can. They want to get into ZBrush, and they're gonna practice, and that'll be their obsession. Same thing, programmers are going to be diving into the programming of it, and they're not really going to want to jump over too much. But if you have someone who on the outside, I guess, kind of appears to be maybe a slacker, they seem to dip kind of quickly into all these things, and they seem to be taking on all kinds of different topics. It's because they are interested in the middle. They're interested in that bridge between the programming and the art. And if you identify them early, then you can keep them interested and hopefully, guide that education.
Anything else that we should know, things you'd be looking for in programs or in student portfolios?
I think that depending on what a student is intending to do, if they are going after a role as an artist or as a programmer or as a designer, they're going to need a solid and very fleshed out, high polish in that field. But students who are, more generalized, sometimes they still have a good chance within the industry. They just need to highlight the fact that they are not, you know, they're not an artist trying to get a job as a designer and vice versa. It's that they are somewhere in the middle and they're willing to be that bridge. So if you are preparing a tech art portfolio, you're going to want things like tools, but you're not going to want just tools, because that's a tools programmer's resume. You want tools, you want examples of where you've kind of bridged the gap between, you know, other people in a team or a collaboration, some art, some design, some programming. And that whole picture, that generalist picture, seems to be the key.
Well, thank you very much. Good stuff.